Welcome back to the archives, traveler. Not every chapter begins with a battle. Some begin with a breath. A rare thing in the Meridian, but earned. They woke to silence. Not the silence of something wrong, the silence of something finished. The fortress was alive around them. Smiths hammering, soldiers drilling, the sounds of an army beginning to rebuild itself after catastrophe. The quartet moved through it all. Kaelister found an armorer and had his blade inspected. The edge had held. The gauntlets were checked, cleaned, resealed. The twin aegis pulsed faintly at his wrists, patient. Tharok restocked. Supplies, rations, a new strap for his shield where the leather had worn thin. He moved through the market stalls without speaking, and people stepped aside without being asked. Valory resupplied her materials. Not arrows. She had no need. But the small things. Bowstring wax, a repair kit for her wooden scale armor, a fresh cloak pin to replace one lost in the spider nest. Lear needed more than supplies. Since the battle, he had been wearing borrowed robes from one of the Order's wizards. Functional, clean, not his. He found the Order's quartermaster. He walked away in dark navy and black, his own colors, his own cloak, a hood that sat the right way. Everywhere they went, people stared. Not with fear, not with suspicion, with something harder to accept. Whispers followed them through the corridors and market stalls. They are the ones. The four who came from the sea, who burned the Spider Queen from within, who opened the cocoons. The quartet did not stop to acknowledge it. They kept moving, resupplying, preparing. They were not yet ready for what the whispers meant. Vaelwyn and Serathiel were resting on the battlements, the wind-veiled and the silent feather of night, gray-white and dark as midnight. Massive and still, their eyes half-closed in the cold mountain air. Valory was there before the others. She moved carefully between them, checking feathers, checking talons, running her hands along the place where saddle straps had worn the plumage thin. She brought food. She spoke quietly. The birds turned their great heads toward her and were still. The others watched from a few steps back. It was Tharok who spoke first. He said what had been unsaid since the battle. Velkaroth knew where they were. Velkaroth knew what they had done. 4 sovereigns dead. And he had not come. Why? The question settled over them. He was not patient. He was a hunter. A demon who rode alone and killed with purpose. After everything they had done, after everything they had taken from the sovereigns, why had the Hatemonger not descended on the Sun Vault fortress and finished them while they were still recovering? The archivist notes what Valory thought then. She did not say it aloud, but the thought was clear in the stillness of her hands and the way she looked briefly at the sky before returning to her work. The beam of light, the road back from the Spire of Bile. When Solmara's tear had gone dark and Velkaroth had raised his blade for the killing blow, and something had struck the earth between them. Pure, absolute, celestial. Every demon incinerated. Velkaroth driven back. The quartet left standing in scorched silence, wondering what had intervened. The Celestials had judged humanity and found it unworthy. That was established truth. They had withdrawn. They did not protect. They did not save. And yet, something had. If the beam had come from the Celestials, if they had chosen even once to intervene on behalf of 4 people the world had largely forgotten, then what did that mean? And if Velkaroth knew that too? If the Hatemonger had felt what it meant to be struck by divine light and nearly unmade by it, was it fear that kept him back? Calculation? Something else entirely? None of them had answers. Valory finished her work on Vaelwyn. The rock made a low sound. She pressed her forehead briefly against the birds and said nothing. The others were quiet. Some questions are not ready to be answered yet. The tavern was warm and loud and smelled of wood smoke and stew. The Rusted Tankard, a fortress tavern that had survived sieges and spider infestations and now served both with equal indifference. The quartet found a table in the corner. Food arrived without being ordered. The staff had recognized them. They were halfway through the meal when Kaelister saw the faces, the soldiers from Iron Cove, their escort from the long journey north, the men and women who had traveled across the ocean with them, survived the march through the forest, fought in the nest. They were here, at their own tables, eating, drinking, quieter than the rest of the room. One of them stood when he noticed the quartet, then the others. They did not cheer. They did not make speeches. The soldier who stood first walked over and told them simply what the people of the fortress had been saying, that 4 travelers from the sea had done what 50,000 soldiers had not, that the whispers in corridors and market stalls all pointed the same direction. The quartet had saved them. People felt indebted. People felt ashamed. The greatest military force in the Meridian had been cocooned in its own halls, and 4 outsiders had burned the threat from within. There was gratitude, and beneath it, quietly, something that felt like guilt. The soldiers were leaving in the morning. Their assignment was complete. Iron Cove was their home and their duty. The Sun Vault would stand without them. One of them asked what the quartet would do next. Kaelister answered, "Today, rest." After that, they would begin looking for the pieces of the Armistice, shattered but not destroyed, taken somewhere for examination, for a way to track their father, for anything that might tell them where either of those things could be found. He paused, and for the first time, said what neither brother had said aloud. Their father's name had not been in the journal. His disappearance had nothing to do with Moria or the Cabal or the breaking of the seal. But the people who had taken the Armistice pieces to examine them, the people who knew what had been done and what might still be done, they were the ones the brothers needed to find. And wherever the real Armistice was, there was a chance their father had followed it. 2 threads, 1 path. The archives record this as a day of stillness. The fortress still scarred from what had lived within it. The Iron Cove soldiers preparing to go home. The Rocs resting on the battlements. Lear in his own robes, ready. And somewhere out there, Velkaroth the Hatemonger circling at a distance that made no sense. Something was watching. Something had saved them once, and had not explained why. The questions were not ready to be answered, but the quartet was ready to start asking them. The archives are now closed.